I'm here with Lola and Lau. Lola is the Legal Services Consumer Panel Manager and Lau is the Legal Services Consumer Panel Associate. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your hectic schedules to talk to us about some issues around facing consumers, around legal technology and the changing legal professional of the future. So to start off with, Lola, could you tell us what you think are consumer behaviours and expectations changing the way in which legal services will be delivered in the future?
I think the first thing I'm going to refer to is the panel's annual tracker survey. That's a piece of quantitative research that gives us an insight into consumer behaviour and their expectation. And I think from that piece of research we're seeing that consumers are paying for their services a lot more, so that number keeps rising every year. I think we're now at 73% of consumers who pay for their own legal services. I think naturally that means that consumers will demand more in terms of value for money, in terms of transparency, and beyond price transparency, I think it would lead consumers to looking at other indicators to assess whether or not they're getting good value for money. So things like quality indicators and things like the land registries recently published data around requisition information. Those type of information will increasingly become important to consumers, and we expect that they would make demands for those information to be readily available so that they can make informed decisions.
Okay.
And now, sorry.
No, I was going to say, Lau, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that I think, as Lola mentioned, from our tracker survey, we can see that reputation is the most important element. Consumers are shopping when they're shopping around. They're looking at reputation, and then comes price. Despite the sector's view that everything that matters for consumers is what's the price, and then they will just take it from there. I think it's one good thing to have in mind.
And that reputation, is that looking at third-party websites, or is that coming from friends and family?
Unfortunately, I think it's still coming from mostly friends and family. Yes, it's still mostly coming from friends and family.
Yeah.
Okay, and the latest tracker survey you referred to, that's on your website, isn't it?
That is not yet published.
Okay.
We have the 2018 data published, but the 2019 is yet to be published.
Okay, and when is that due?
This summer?
Yeah.
Okay, great, a few months away then. Okay, thank you. And Lola, thinking about the future and future consumer needs, what kind of legal professions do you think will be needed?
Absolutely those who are responsive to consumers' needs, to their varying needs, and those who really understand that consumers are, we have segments of consumers, so professionals who can really respond to different needs, and that includes, those who can respond to the real needs of consumers who can't afford legal services. So offering things like new technology that might lower the cost for some consumers. I think for us, going back to our tracker survey data, we have seen a disparity between how certain groups of consumers are experiencing the legal services market as opposed to others. So how ethnic minority consumers are experiencing the legal services market. I think there is a real gap in professionals actually tapping into those segments. So a quick example is if we look at will writing, for example, we know that Black Africans are less likely to have wills than any other groups, and we are still quite surprised that there aren't more professionals really tapping into providing those services, although we know that there are loads of cultural barriers, cultural reasons why some groups might not feel that wills are for them, but we think that is the kind of things that the new professionals that are responsive to needs should be thinking about, and that's where you might actually be able to get different types of businesses as well.
Okay, and you mentioned technology. So Lau, do you think technology is a driver or enabler of future legal service delivery?
Well, I would say that legal technology or law tech is an enabler, because I believe consumer will be able to access much faster services delivered in quicker time. Hopefully this will reduce also the price of the services they access, and will make them more accessible from their living rooms, from their offices, so they don't have to go in person and meet a provider. So therefore, obviously, I think regulators should be aware of risk and to mitigate for consumer protection. But all in all, I believe law technology is an enabler for accessing legal services.
And is there any work that the Consumer Panel is doing on tech? Is there any report that you're looking to publish on this, and if so, when?
Yeah, so it's spot on. We're working on a paper at the moment. It's a discussion paper on legal technology and regulation, and we plan to publish it in due course. Hopefully this month. Should be live on our website.
Okay, that's great. We'll look out for that then. Thank you. And thinking about then the risks that might be around arising from the changing legal landscape, if you were to name the top 3 risks for consumers in that changing landscape, what might they be?
So I would say consumer confusion. The panel has consistently warned about consumer confusion, as we have multiple regulators, we have different types of services, different delivery modes, some bigger regulators really changing their handbook, changing the way that professionals deliver services and where they can deliver services, and we've consistently highlighted consumer confusion as one of them. And even if you look at something that cuts across all regulators, it's the need for PII, for example, and the varying differences in that. So consumer confusion is one of the key risks that we think that regulators need to watch out for. Another one is a reduction in consumer protection, as we have an expansion of new services as well. And diversity. I think the sector in general will recognise that there is a problem with diversity, but I think that they're not perhaps as alive to that translating into even how consumers are experiencing the legal services on offer. So, as I said earlier, that our data shows that different groups are experiencing legal services differently. There might be a link with more diversity in general. Those are the top 3 things.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add on that, Lau?
I totally agree with that. I would just add 2 things. One of them would be on diversity, that, for example, when consumers with a different ethnic background are comparing prices, we've seen that, for example, Chinese or Indian are the ones who struggle the most to compare prices, and that figure has remained high. Obviously, it's been decreased over the years, but still, they are the ethnic groups that are struggling the most. And what I would add is transparency. I think it's great that the sector is moving forward. There's transparency of price. It has increased over the past months, but I think looking only at price transparency without quality can be, again, add to the confusion and the kind of the shortcut idea that if the price is high, that means quality is high as well, when I'm sure there are a lot of providers who deliver good value for money services at a high quality and a good and affordable price as well.
Quality means different things to different people, though, doesn't it?
That's also true.
As you said, Lola, it's the lack of other quality indicators in the market, and how regulators and professional bodies actually have quite a task ahead of them to identify what they could be that would be meaningful to all the different types of consumers that you've just talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, and to conclude, thinking about regulation, how do you think it's going to need to evolve to continue to maintain public trust and confidence in light of those 3 risks you've just talked about?
I think regulation would have to, the focus around outcome-based regulation is spot on. And I think that regulators will need to ensure that continues to work. Consumer research. I think it's difficult to do regulation well without getting intelligence from the consumers who you're supposed to be protecting. So I think a lot more investment in consumer research will be needed by regulators. And then joined up regulation, we work in a sector where there are multiple regulators for now. That's just the reality of things. And but things can be mitigated against much better if regulators worked together a little bit more. And that's why we're so supportive of the various forums where the regulators come together. But we would like to see more joined up working, for example, in actual policy development and implementation. I think that is one way to kind of mitigate against the reduction in consumer protection, the gaps that might arise, and to mitigate also against consumer confusion.
I'm going to throw a question at you. What do you think about the idea of a single code of conduct across all regulators so that consumers, regardless of whichever professional they go to, if there was an issue, that there would be a single code with some simple principles to which all lawyers or regulated persons would have to adhere to? Would that help with the confusion that you talked about?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Intuitively, I think absolutely. If it can work, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
I throw it in. It's slightly unfair,
yes,
but it's something I've talked about for a while now, and it's how we get some traction behind it.
Yeah, intuitively, I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
If regulators can really get together to make that work. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for your time. Really appreciate your insights, and we'll look forward to the tracker survey that's coming out later in the year and your tech report that's coming out at the end of this month.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank